You're about to experience Healthline, a show where doctors from 𝗛𝗲𝗵𝗹 interact with you for a healthy, uplifting lifestyle. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto. You've got questions, we've got answers. So welcome to Healthline.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Healthline with 𝗛𝗲𝗵𝗹. I'm your host, Nicole Jacinto. It's August 21 here in the Philippines. It's a Monday, and it's 5 p.m. here. So good afternoon to those who are watching live and who are listening live on DZRJ 810 AM, Radyo Bandido, and Radyo Bandido TV. I'd like to say hello to Tata, who's watching, and to my mom, who's watching, and a belated happy birthday to Lucia in Madrid, who may be watching right now or may watch later. Of course, you know you can always watch us by subscribing to the YouTube channel. It's free, and on Facebook, and we have so many other platforms. Hello to Alessandra of Madrid, who is always watching, and to Mitchell in San Francisco, Nadine in Honolulu. Okay, today our topic is mental health awareness, and we are so honored. I am so honored to have a very special, intelligent, and articulate guest, Dr. 𝗛𝗲𝗹𝗁. Now, she's been on the program several times, but today we're going to talk about mental awareness. There's so much to cover. So we'll just go with the flow and see where it takes us, because I'm sure so many people have so many questions. And as we say, you've got questions and we've got answers. If you'd like those questions answered by Dr. 𝗛𝗲𝗁, please send them in while we're live so that she can answer your questions. Okay, good afternoon, Dr. 𝗛𝗲𝗁. How are you?
Hi, Nicole. Good afternoon. I'm good. Thank you for having me in your show.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show. I know how busy you are. And it is really a privilege to have you here to talk about mental health awareness. Okay, so just to start off, we're talking about awareness about mental health. Can I ask you, and you don't have to answer like very personally, but just what got you interested in mental health? You know, because there's an awareness. So what got you interested in going into this? Just maybe an incident, like when you were, I don't know, growing up or in college or becoming a doctor, that got you interested in being a psychiatrist and people's mental health?
Okay, it started, Nicole, no? It's really quite interesting because it started out, I was so interested. You know, how come some people would like hear voices? How come sometimes they would be like paranoid, they believe things that aren't like really true? So it started out like that. I went into medical school not wanting to go into any other specialty. So it started like that. So it was like mental illness, what that got me into psychiatry. However, you know, when I was practicing already, it became apparent that not everything is about mental illness. Sometimes I get patients who are just, well, actually well, but it's just that they're very conscious. They want to make sure that they're functioning the best way that they can. And then so that and plus the pandemic, you know, the pandemic kasi parang gave us what was like really well, the normal.
It affected us so much that it gave us
exactly.
It gave us like a sense of, hey, with a new normal, like we are not functioning the same way.
It was annoying because the pandemic, it was everything was so abnormal. So whatever you're feeling sort of like kind of like normalized because everybody was so anxious. You see, so during the pandemic, my interest in mental health and not just mental illness was heightened. So that's how it all started.
So there is a difference between, mental health, of course, mental illness falls under it. But as you said, you also have come across patients who, you know, they just want to make sure that they're okay, or maybe they need to get through humps, and they do not necessarily have mental illness or yet, but it's a way to help people get through their life in a less anxious way, in a less stressed out way. And okay, how would you define mental health awareness, and why is it important in today's society? Just a brief description.
It's like it's like a spectrum. Like on one end of the spectrum, you have like mental illnesses, and you know those are the ones that need to be treated because those are the times that you know the function is affected, like relationships are affected. And then, you know, like in the middle, there's sort of, you know, like sort of blah. We're not really ill, but at the same time, we're not functioning the best way that we can. But and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like mental wellness. And mental wellness is actually, or mental health is actually functioning the best way that you can. You know, so that is not just the absence of illness, but really optimal functioning, like thriving, flourishing, you know, and that is what our goal as much as possible, you know, for
That's
everything.
great, doctor. That's great. I mean, that's such a great definition. It is a spectrum. On one end, there's mental illness. I'll just recap what you said. On the other end, there's people who are functioning. And I think the word function is important. And then in the middle, there's sort of this blah, like you may be depressed for now, or you may be anxious for now, and because of a certain situation for now. And you try to, I guess, when you said mental health, what it is to really be able to be at that end of the spectrum where you're not just not mentally ill, but you're thriving. I think that's so important
Yeah.
because we hear a lot about taking care of our bodies and being fit, and reaching a certain goal weight and making sure that we don't get sick, but we kind of neglect our minds and our well-being. So thank you for
Exactly.
saying that.
And you know what, Nicole? I really liked your use of the word "for now," because
For
not
now.
just because like somebody is like on one end of the spectrum means that they'll be there like forever. You're right. It's just like could be like a hump that they have to like get over, so you can like move from like one part of the spectrum to the other. I think that's
So there,
important to
thank you, doctor. So there is hope, and you help
Oh,
people get
definitely.
okay.
Definitely. Oh.
And when it comes to the hope and all of this, and because I think your description, um, totally breaks down a lot of misconceptions about mental health. And what are some of the misconceptions that you often come across? I mean, you've put it in such a way, in such a light that makes it so much clearer and so much broader and also more definitive for everyone, because we throw around so many words, and later we can circle back to that, no, the words that we throw around and the feelings we have. But maybe can you tell us about some myths and go bust some myths that there are about mental illness and mental health?
Well, I think one of the most common that we encounter is that if somebody's like mentally ill, they're weak,
Yes.
or if somebody, you're not depressed, i-pray mo lang yan, kulang ka lang sa faith, or lumabas ka lang. It's not like that eh. When somebody has a mental illness, it's just like diabetes, it's like hypertension. Nobody wants to have diabetes, nobody wants to have hypertension, and more so, nobody wants to be depressed and not be able to function. So it's not like that. It's not as simplistic as that. And for somebody, going through that, if you tell them, oh, pray ka lang, it sort of like minimizes what they're going through. And instead of getting the help that they need, they're not able to do so.
Do you find that a lot of patients you've come across, and let's focus on adult patients now, like 18 and above. I know that children, there are a lot of psychiatrists who deal with, or psychologists who deal with children in particular, and also seniors. There's a specialty for that.
That's right.
But let's focus just like 18 and above, so that we can, I guess a lot of people, including my generation, I won't tell you which one it is. And
I have an idea.
I mean, no, I think you know what generation it is. Actually, doctor, can you just speak up louder for the microphone? I think it's a bit low. By the time.
Okay.
No, not really bad. Just a bit low. And maybe my voice is too loud. I don't know.
No,
Okay,
it's
so
fine.
okay. And then so focusing on adults 18 and above, there's people in, even the millennials are adults now, and then the Gen Z, they're also adults. And when it comes to that age group, there's already so many people experiencing either, problems, or thinking they may have mental health issues, or maybe ignoring it. But do you find that the patients that you've come across in this particular demographic, when people tell them, oh, just pray, or nah, it's all in your mind. Yeah, it's in your mind, but that's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you find that they feel worse? Or, I mean, is it dismissive?
Yes, they feel like marginalized. They
Yes.
feel marginalized because, it's not as if, a lot of, because we're in a Catholic country, so a lot of these people have probably tried like praying. These
Yes.
people have probably tried like talking with other people, but it has not like really helped. So,
Yes.
so I think there's a need to recognize that it's really a medical illness that needs to be treated. It's worth mentioning also, now you're right, we're focusing on the adult population. But I want to stress also, like in the certain population, like for example, the older age group,
Yes.
if the initial onset of symptoms would be like, usually kasi like yung mga depression,
Yes.
bipolar, the mood disorders, anxiety, the mood disorders, usual onset would be like 20s, at most maybe 30s. If you have like initial onset of these symptoms, like psychosis, mood, depression, bipolar, etc., like sort of like older na, like maybe 50s, 60s and above, what you would want to do is to rule out medical causes. That's very important. You do not assume immediately that it's like primarily psychiatric. You have to rule out medical causes first. I cannot overstress the importance of that also.
I'm so happy you said that. Yeah, so with someone like you in your practice, you also go into what are the other causes? This person may not be mentally ill or have a certain mood disorder, but there are other physical factors, especially when they get older, that are causing some of these issues that they're experiencing and making life difficult for them.
That's right.
And aging is always difficult, I think.
Yeah.
And then also for those caring for those who are aging, it's just like caring for those who are younger, you kind of go through it. And then, people always talk about how difficult it is to raise their children, even if they love them. It's also difficult when you love someone who's aging and there are certain things they have to deal with. It's difficult. And thank you for mentioning that, Doc. You mentioned certain mood disorders, and maybe part of the myth busting also, if we could just go through this, because we just very briefly touch on it. We throw words around in our society these days. Like you mentioned the word bipolar. A lot of people throw it around. Can you just describe or define what exactly bipolar person, our person who has bipolar disorder is like? What is it, I guess in a medical or psychiatric term?
Okay.
Just very briefly.
I won't use like technical terms because I want the lay people, our audience, to understand. No, when you say bipolar, it means that there are two poles. So one being like depression, and one being the opposite of depression, which is like being so hyperactive, like having so much energy. Okay, so if it's just a depression and you don't get the opposite of depression, then it's called unipolar depression, major depressive disorder, etc. However, some people, they have like the opposite of depression also. They're hyperactive, mood is like so elevated, super talkative, like so many thoughts in their head, easily distractible, like start one thing, cannot finish another thing, and then just jump from one topic to another, and then so much energy. They feel that there's no need for sleep. They sleep like maybe 3 or 4 hours and then wake up and then energized and ready na naman for the next day. And then, they get into like, they have so much confidence. They get into all sorts. Sometimes they get into trouble na because they spend so much. They feel like they have so much money. Or sometimes, they go like become like sexually indiscreet and all of that. The very poor impulse control. So that is the hyperactivity na part.
Is that what people still call or maybe used to call mania?
Yeah, that's right. Before it was called like manic depressive. Now it's called like bipolar. But, sometimes some people are very conscious, So they tell me, a patient will tell me, Doc, kasi parang minsan parang malungkot ako, tapos mamaya parang may magpapatawa, matatawa ko. Well, we have to be very careful also about labeling someone as bipolar. Sometimes it's just like the normal mood fluctuations, which is usual for us. Talagang pag may nagpapatawa, matatawa ka. If somebody just nanood ka ng movie na malungkot or whatever, or you hear a sad story, you'll be sad. Diba? That's not bipolar. It's just normal fluctuations of the mood.
Maybe we can circle back to that later, Doc, about yung how to tell when it's a normal thing and how to tell when it's actually a disorder. Just a little bit, just generally touch on it because, we throw these words around and as you said earlier, such a beautiful explanation. It's a spectrum and maybe you're going through a blah period and then you're okay for a while. And as you said, we have to be careful and to just judge someone as being bipolar just because they present different moods.
That's right.
Okay. So doctor, other terms. Okay, so bipolar, and then we throw around other terms like, depression. You mentioned depression. There's major depressive disorders or minor depressive disorder.
Well, yes, there is, and the different kinds. There's that whole, some will be able to fulfill the criteria, but not the length of time because we have what we call in DSM. For you to be able to be diagnosed as major depressive disorder, you have to have five symptoms out of 9, and for at least 2 weeks, you know. So you have different kinds of depression. You have minor depressive disorder when you can like fulfill maybe like less than the 5, but its causes clinically impaired, like functioning. Or sometimes naman you're able to fulfill the 5, pero it's not quite 2 months, 2 weeks. You see, so may different kinds like that. But sometimes also you can have like what we call like parang adjustment, like adjustment disorders. That means something happens, and we got a lot of this in clinical practice. Something very distressing happens, and then they're able to they react to it in a way that's in excess of what others would maybe react. So like for example, yan yung kunwari, mag-break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and then they suddenly decide to try to commit suicide. You know, those are mga adjustment disorders. Mga adjustment disorders, you know, you take out the stressor, and after that, they'll be fine again. You see, so different kinds of depression like that.
We also hear about stressors all the time. And a lot of people throw around the word trigger, like people who are not non-medical professional, like, I mean, even myself, like, oh, so you got, you know, people say, so you got triggered. Can you talk a bit just about triggers so that we don't, you know, just irresponsibly throw these terms around like, you got triggered. Yeah.
Well, triggers, I guess, I would consider them like mga stressors.
Stressors.
So like if something happens and then, you know, so for example, my trigger is my mom, you know, or you know, my trigger is somebody says something like this. You know, parang it's so, sometimes it's so overly used, no?
Yes, it is.
I guess the concept, that word is overly used, but the concept is important. Because if you know what it is, like, you know, for lack of a better term, triggers you, then hopefully you will be able to avoid, you know, like this trigger, so that you'll be able to protect your mental health.
Yes, also avoid the triggers and the stressors. The things that put you in that situation. So great you talked about.
Wait lang, Nicole, I have something to add.
Sure,
so
go ahead.
You know, just ano lang, I saw someone, and really, really beautiful. I said that, you know, I'm gonna quote you on this. As I saw a patient, and he said that, you know, so doctor, it's not just I'm just not taking note of my triggers, but I'm also taking note of the glimmers. Cute,
that's beautiful. The things that make you happy.
Yeah, the things that make you happy. So it really makes a twist on the ano.
Yes.
So instead of just focusing on the negative, you want to focus also on the good things that are happening to you, and this would be like the glimmers or glitters.
Yes. I love that. You know, I mean, beautiful. I love that. Thank you to your patient.
Yeah.
That reminds me of well, it's something a bit different, but along those lines, because my sister Nadine, she talks to a lot of artistic people, for example, like myself, and she said this thing like, "Hey, the opposite of depressed is express." Like
nice, that's cute, no?
Yeah, Nadine, I'm attributing that to you because you keep saying that to me and others. Like, you know, sometimes people are also artistic and they may not be depressed or anything, but because their constitution is a bit different, like maybe you're not doing what makes you happy, like what your patient said, like maybe writing a poem, expressing yourself, or painting something that makes you happy. No? Okay.
And another thing, the express can also be like expressing how you feel. So this means like to develop your social network. And I cannot overstress the importance of social network in improving the mood. You know, I always say this. Sometimes, you know, we have patients who go to the ER because they're feeling suicidal. So when they're in the ER, we have no choice, but we have to contact the relatives, etc. And then the relatives will come in and say, I did not know that you were going through this, etc. And you know what? Before they leave the hospital, it seems like the depression has like lifted, you know, has improved like several fold, just because they were able to express how they're feeling and they're able to get the support that they need. So
and find their voice.
Yeah, exactly. So beautiful that the express, opposite of depressive.
Nadine Jacinto said that. Okay.
We have to attribute that to her.
Yes, Nadine Jacinto, please, when you watch this, I was just chatting with her earlier.
Yeah.
And also, doctor, okay, just some terms just to get them out of the, like, how do you define insanity?
Okay, that's really quite interesting. And when patients ask me, you know, hey doc, do you think I'm insane? You know, I would tell them, I really have no way of telling, because when I'm seeing patients like clinically, what I am concerned with will be the diagnosis, because that will give me the treatment, that will give me the prognosis. The word insanity only becomes relevant if there's like a court case, and if somebody's like invoking their mental state, as an excuse, like for example, if somebody like commits a crime, killed someone, and they're saying, oh, I was insane at the time of the crime. So the law has certain definitions for insanity. So, so they would say, oh, at the time that the crime was being committed, they did not know that, what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot in the books. With the books we've read, pop culture, the shows we've watched.
Exactly.
Like, not guilty due to insanity or, diba? Yeah,
so
okay.
It only becomes relevant if there's like a court case, against that person. Otherwise, it's irrelevant.
How about schizophrenic or schizophrenia? Just a quick definition.
Schizophrenia is an illness wherein the person is not in touch with reality. Meaning, for somebody to have schizophrenia, they may have like hallucinations. So meaning they're seeing things that aren't there, they're hearing things that aren't there, they're feeling things that aren't there, not so common, not tasting and, smelling things that aren't there. Most common will be auditory hallucinations, hearing things.
So hearing.
Yeah. If somebody has like visual hallucinations, that one can be more of delirium. Okay. So you have hallucinations, you can have like delusions. Delusions are mga fixed false beliefs that are inconsistent with reality. So for example, somebody, for example, example that I always give to like students, if you have somebody like coming, let's say somebody saying that, they believe in duende. And the duende is like, talking with them, dadaan sila sa the duende is galit, that's why these things happen. I would consider that a delusion if this person did not grow up in that kind of environment, believing in duende.
So there's a cultural...
There's a cultural component to it.
Okay.
However, if somebody's like coming from the province, that talagang grew up in that environment, believing in duendes, I'm not gonna say this person is deluded. So and then if it has to be fixed. So, oh, maybe it's not true naman that this person is galit sa'yo. And then saying, oh nga no, parang hindi naman galit. So that's not a delusion. It's a false belief, but it's not fixed, so it's not a delusion. So you can have hallucinations, delusions, and some people, you have poverty of content, meaning they don't speak so much. It's when they think things, it's like really, really so slow, the processing. Some people can have like disorganized behavior, meaning that they do things that are like would appear strange to other people. So
but it makes sense in their world.
In their world, that's correct. So those are disorganized thoughts, or some disorganized behavior. Or sometimes you can have disorganized thought, meaning they talk, but the thought process is disjointed. We just cannot seem to follow. Like one thing leading to another. Parang there's dissonance in all of these things that they're saying. That is schizophrenia.
Galing, doctor. See, I throw out some hard questions and you got it. I'm putting you on the spot, but
I just will be able to answer naman, Nicole. Don't over
Well, okay. How about narcissistic behavior or narcissistic personality, and then we have OC or OCD being thrown out all the time, and then we have borderline personality, which I don't hear people throw out a lot, but I've heard about it. Okay, just very quick.
These are personality disorders, no? Let me stress that we all have personality traits. Traits are different from disorders. Okay. So for example, I think to a certain degree, like all doctors are a little bit OC, obsessive compulsive, because especially like for example, if you have a nephrologist who's like who's like so particular, you have to measure the urine to the last ml, that is good because that will benefit their patients. However, if it becomes so inflexible, so rigid, such that, to the point that they have to get control over their, let's say they go home and the wives have to report to them like every minute of the day what they're doing, and lahat ng mga ginastos, lahat ng resibo ibibigay sa kanya, that is no longer adaptive. So that may be a symptom of, like, let's say, obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
Or how about cleanliness? I think some people get a bad rap for being too clean. And especially
Ah,
after COVID, everybody, I'm glad you brought that up because it's not just about cleanliness or they'll say, oh, OC ka naman, ganyan, ganyan. I think they get a
that's what
bad
you
rap for
mean.
being clean.
Oo.
But there's also people who it rules their lives na.
Kasi Nicole, iba yung obsessive-compulsive disorder
Mhm.
versus obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Pag
Yes.
obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, yun yung sinasabi ko, all about the control, the
Control.
rigidity. Oo. Pero pag obsessive-compulsive disorder, yan yung parang minsan hugas ng kamay to the point na parang nagkakasugat na yung kamay. You know, yun yung parang check ng mga doorknobs kahit na hindi na makalabas ng bahay kasi check ng check. That is obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. You know? So tama ka. So funny nga you know, sa
Hindi,
nung
tinatanong lang
pandemic.
kita, Doc, kasi di ba a lot of people throw it around and we're like,
Tama. Oo, that's why
ano
I'm
ba
glad
to?
to be able to
Kasi mental health awareness, so we're
yeah,
aware.
that's right. Oo.
How about, okay,
Pero tama ka, Nicole, ang cute din kasi, I want to tell you something. Nung
sige.
during the pandemic, so cute kasi, may patient ako na may OCD. Sabi niya, see, Doc, lahat ng tao parang mas pa sa akin ngayon sa kakacheck na pakakahugas ng
Yes!
kamay.
Actually, may kilala ko,
Yeah.
Doc. Dati
Oo.
pa siya
Yeah.
ganun. Like when you go into her house, she's gonna know who she is. Pero it's okay, I'm not gonna say her name. When you go into her house, take off your shoes, put on her tapos, hands, ganun, before the
Yeah.
pandemic. So when the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, parang she didn't get as stressed out as other
Yeah.
people. In fact, she
Exactly,
started
diba?
relaxing.
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So okay.
Interesting.
When we talk about you mentioned the mental health disorders, people are anxious, anxiety, or let's say generalized anxiety disorder, simply anxiety. Can you talk a bit about that and describe it? Because everyone has some kind of anxiety at some point, but
Exactly.
you know what is it that makes it like something that allows us not to function, or
Yeah.
when we should be concerned about it.
Okay. So like this, anxiety itself is not a bad thing. You know, it's not a bad thing because, like, for example, if a test, I have an exam coming up, and then I'm anxious about the exam, what will I do? I'll probably study more. And because I'm studying more, then I'm preparing more, so I'll probably do better in my exam. However, if that anxiety becomes so bad that it's debilitating already, and you're not able to function, you just sort of like paralyzed, you're just paralyzed during the exam. So then that's not such a good thing. Then that already constitutes a disorder. You know, so it can be generalized anxiety, meaning that you're just like sort of like worrying about like all things. The whole day you just can't function because you're just like worrying and worrying and worrying. Or it can be panic. Yung mga panic disorder naman, these are discrete episodes. Ito yung mga pasyente nakikita namin sa ER. Kasi they'll have like chest pain, heart is beating so fast, they cannot breathe, they feel that they're having a heart attack. They go to the ER and everything checks out and everything's normal. Yan yung panic disorder naman. And of course, you also have like social anxiety, phobias, etc., etc. Those are under anxiety disorder.
So so let's say, okay, that's a great description, Doc. So there are also degrees, and as you said, anxiety in itself is not bad because is it maybe like our adrenaline kicking up to do things?
Tama.
Like we are that flight or fight.
That's exactly tama ka, Nicole. So for example, you're crossing the street and our car comes rushing towards you. Fight or flight, you'll probably jump out and then heart your beat very fast. So what happens there is that our system goes on overdrive to protect us. It goes to the heart so that it can pump more blood so that we'll be able to run away from the danger. So
lift the refrigerator, lift the car,
that's good. However, can you imagine constantly being in that state of chronic stress?
I can imagine that.
If you're constantly like that, and then the cortisol, the stress hormones increase and makes you more prone to like to like hypertension, blood sugar increases, it makes you prone to all of these medical illnesses, gets prone to like anxiety disorders, etc. Then that's no longer good.
And it's horrible. As you said earlier, when you have certain disorders, nobody wants to live this way. But we have to recognize With
Exactly.
that we can't just dismiss people who have this. And I love what you said earlier, that one of the biggest misconceptions is that people who have who are within the spectrum, whether they're at the end and they have mental illness, or they're in the beginning, or they're somewhere in the middle and have this for now, are perceived as weak.
Yeah, it's
I
not
love.
like that.
Yeah.
No, no, it's not like that talaga. It's really an illness. It's not weakness. It's
Mhm.
not because, bakit ang yaman-yaman nito? Bakit may depression? You know,
Oo, maraming
it's
mga ganyan.
maraming ganun, di ba?
Oo.
Anong poproblemahin, Sometimes to the point na mahihiya yung mga pasyente to say they're depressed kasi,
Mm.
they'll tell me, Doc, I really have nothing to be depressed about. Everything's going well, I'm kind of well off naman, financially, walang problema, mabait asawa ko, mabait yung mga anak ko, happy naman ako, masaya ako sa work ko, pero bakit ako depressed? You see?
Yes.
Because they feel there's no reason, they become ashamed, and sometimes that prevents them from getting the help that they need.
Mm. And that's I think sometimes, I just want to circle back to what you said earlier. When people say those things and it makes people ashamed to say, I don't feel good, I need some help, I'm asking for help. Maybe culturally in our society, alam mo, there's also a crab mentality. I have to say, I've seen that. Sorry guys, pero ganyan din tayo. Like, if somebody has something that you want or you think is great, you think they have no reason to be anxious, but you don't know what they're going through.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
there's people who, parang may pagka-inggitero minsan yung mga tao. Like what you said, oh, may ganyan naman yan, may ganyan. Kasi those are the things you want.
Yeah.
But maybe this person is not settled with other things or personal things, or maybe they didn't get to do something they wanted in their youth, or they wanted to be this and that pala, but their life turned out another way, and they're not really, a lot of women I think go through this, they're not really unhappy, but parang they missed out on something. And now I'm also going to the sexism of our society, but let's stop there. Okay. Ang dami kasi, di ba? And then, okay, borderline personality.
Okay. Borderline, the personality disorders, as I said, would be like a pattern of inflexible thinking and behavior and emotions. Sometimes, ang borderline personality, it's hard to differentiate from like bipolar. Ang borderline personality, ito yung mga those people who have like mga fears of abandonment. They have mga extremes of mood. Sometimes they have like parang mga chronic feelings of emptiness.
Yes.
There's always like chronically depressed. And they have like sometimes they have like chronically, they have like mga suicidal thoughts. Sometimes the pain that they're experiencing is so bad that they'll, yung mga kilos mo parang cut ng cut because they're not able to express all of that emotional pain. So it comes out in like mga paulit-ulit na mga suicide attempts. Sometimes sila yung parang, they're prone to like mga rages. Parang sobrang galit because they have difficulty regulating the emotions. Things that would not ordinarily like trigger someone be like upset. They get like super upset and they go into rages, sometimes parang sumisigaw, parang sometimes mananakit, yung mga extremes na yan.
But they can also be successful people, right, doctor?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Kasi they can compartmentalize.
That's
And
right. Definitely, pwede talaga. So it will depend on the expression of the symptoms. Sometimes sila yung parang they would devalue or idealize, meaning sila yung parang super gusto yung isang tao tapos may nagawang mali, super na parang nag-fail na sa books nila, hindi na papansinin, parang we call that parang splitting. So that's borderline personality.
Parang konting lang, na-disappoint sila, mahal na mahal nila yung tao, tapos konting lang,
That's
parang
right. Wala
gusto na nilang ibaon sa lupa.
Na parang ganon.
So tama pala yung diagnosis ko dun sa isang kilala ko. Mahirap na. Loko lang, Doc. Alam ko wala akong karapatan mag-diagnose. Pero sabi ko sa iyo, Doc, mahirap parang bipolar at borderline. Tama.
Oo, tama. Mahirap yung i-distinguish. Ang difference yan, I guess, is ang bipolar kasi, parang you have like discrete episodes of like mood changes. No? So you have like maybe at least 1 week of like mood changes na parang mania, another 1 or 2 weeks of depression, discrete periods. After that, or everything's okay na. Kasi kapag borderline, since it refers to the personality, parang it's really more or less constant. It's how a person like reacts to the people around him or her. You know, so that one, hindi, yung parang more of parang, it's more pervasive as
It's more
compared with
pervasive, it's
discrete
steady.
episodes versus
And then,
discrete episodes.
okay, connected to borderline, narcissistic personality disorder or narcissists. We
Uh,
hear,
okay. I
okay.
think there's always like a healthy dose of narcissism in all of us. You know,
Yes.
you know, it gives us it gives us confidence. You know, it
Mhm.
makes us, you know, to meet people. There's a healthy dose of narcissism. And pero yung mga narcissists talaga, people with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy. Everything that they see, it's all about them. You know,
Yeah.
probably because, you know, sometimes maiinis ka, bakit parang sobrang self-centered, etc. But you have
Oo.
to look at it people who are narcissistic, usually, kaya they need like all of that attention and all of
Yes.
that devotion and all of that, is because there was like a fundamental lack. When they were younger, they probably did not get the kind of affirmation that all of us would, you know, should be getting when we were younger. So
But they can scheme for the tiniest things and lie and hurt people around them. And actually, doctor, we just need to take a short break and put in a report. But when we come back, maybe I can ask you, you know, okay, so we understand these people, we understand, and they're in our family or whatever, but maybe how to protect ourselves from that also, we can circle back. Because as you said, it's not just about those who are ill, but it's about those who want to be well. So everybody stay tuned to Healthline with Makati Med. This is such a great show, such an interesting topic, and we have like the best here. Sorry guys, but Dr. 𝗶𝗶𝗁𝗁 has like wow, been here before and never ceases to amaze. Stay tuned to Healthline with Makati Med. We'll be right back.
You're listening to DZRJ 810 AM. We'll be right back after these reminders.
Hi, this is Dr. Jacinto from Makati Medical Center, and I'm happy to share that our world-class quality healthcare with the heart is now more accessible and affordable at Makati Med Care Access, Araneta City. What's more, Makati Med Care Access is the only single-use hemodialysis center in Araneta City. It's now easier for patients to avail of renal care services right in the heart of Cubao. We offer health screening and diagnostic procedures in this facility at affordable rates. You can get services such as mammogram, ultrasound, lab procedures, ECG, and many others. We believe that access to affordable, quality, and compassionate healthcare is a basic human right. And we at Makati Med Care Access Araneta City are doing our best to make this possible to more people. You can find us at the ground floor of Manhattan Plaza Tower 1 in Araneta Center, Cubao. We are open from Mondays to Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. For inquiries, you may reach out to us at the numbers below. We look forward to serving you here at Makati Med Care Access, Araneta City.
You're back with Healthline, keeping you healthy. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto.
Welcome back, everybody. The topic is mental health awareness. It's a no-holds-barred discussion with Dr. 𝗶𝗶𝗁𝗁𝗁. I'm your host, Nicole Jacinto, and I hope that this show reaches as many people as it can and that it reaches the people who can benefit from it the most. So, Doctor, thank you for educating us, informing us, and uplifting us with just simply your presence. Okay, so you're talking about some disorders or, you know, words we throw around all the time, and you defined, I'm just recapping, you defined mental illness or mental health as a spectrum. On one end, you're good, but you may not be functioning as well as you should. And you said that is taking care of yourself, that's mental, sorry, what did you call it? Mental, that is what you consider mental health, being, being at your best and functioning.
Thriving and flourishing.
Okay, thriving and flourishing. Okay, then on the other end, there is where you have the illness, and there's the in between, and it's not necessarily forever. It's just
Yeah.
for now. Okay,
Yeah.
doctor. So, I did ask you before we went on break, how we could protect ourselves, maybe because we are exposed to a lot of people. I mean, we have our own issues. Maybe we are exposed to a lot of people who, as you were saying, some may seem self-centered, some may be like this, some may be like that, but not all of us can, live within their control,
Mhm.
within how they want to control the world or control people, or it's just not tenable. It's just simply, you can't, because we that results in a word we throw around a lot, which is toxic. And I want you to kind of get that and explain that also. And also, maybe we shouldn't throw toxic around so much,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are like, oh, I went to work, it's toxic. But really, is it that toxic? I mean, let me tell you what jobs are toxic. And then there's also people who have to live with their trigger, or their stressor, or have to live within circumstances, and they get PTSD. Can you talk first about the word toxic and then PTSD? Because we also throw that around.
Okay.
The toxic. How would you describe a toxic environment?
Well, I think like a toxic person or somebody, a toxic environment is, a person, or so, and like an environment wherein it adds like negativity to your
Mhm.
life, and then you become like more upset, and you become more anxious, and then
Mhm.
it disrupts how you're supposed to be doing things, and it adds like a lot of negativity to your
Mhm.
life, no? So that's parang toxic, I think, no? That is how I would define it.
Yes.
And then what's the other one? PTSD.
PTSD, yeah.
Well, strictly speaking, when you say PTSD, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, Usually under DSM, you have to go through, like a life-threatening illness or a situation. So, for example, like near-death situations, or witnessing a near-death situation of a loved one. So, like, for example, maybe like rape, or, seeing somebody get killed, or, whatever. So that is
Or like violence and like.
violence,
Mhm.
exactly. Those are the big traumas, no?
Mhm.
And because of that, I'm defining PTSD muna,
Yes.
you
Yes.
can have like parang mga avoidance symptoms. So meaning like you don't want, for example, kung pag na-hold up ka in a certain place, you're
Mhm.
avoiding that place, you don't want to go through that place, kasi every time that you go there, parang you get like mga palpitations, etc. So you just avoid thoughts of thinking about that particular place. What else? You can also have like mga nightmares, very intrusive
Yeah.
symptoms. You keep on like dreaming about it, and then sometimes you get like parang paulit-ulit na mga thoughts, mga intrusive thoughts about it. And sometimes you can have emotional reactivity,
Mhm.
easily startled. Parang somebody will just tapiking ka lang, tapos biglang sobrang
Yeah.
grabe na yung your reaction.
Tapos labas na yung mga, ay, pu, 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 pu. Yung mga reaction na, ay, ganito, ay, ganyan. And don't worry, I know, I won't say it on the air, pero
Oo. That is yung parang talaga, yung
something traumatized the
yung
person.
post-traumatic stress disorder under the DSM. But that being said, sometimes kasi, we can have like, for lack of a better term, like more minor traumas. So
Mhm.
not naman life-threatening, pero
Mhm.
sometimes it still somehow leaves its mark on you. So
Mhm.
maybe that's what people are referring to when they
Mhm.
say that PTSD. But officially speaking, I would not officially label that as
Has
PTSD.
PTSD. You were talking about avoidance. Is it possible? I mean, let me give you certain examples. Like, of course, if you got held up somewhere, you don't want to go there, or if you
Yeah,
got. I mean, there are certain people, like, let's say their loved one got into an accident in a certain place. They
avoid,
hate passing by that place.
exactly.
So those are obvious ways of avoiding, because you don't want to get stressed, or you don't want to be reminded. Are there cases where they would fall under that, where, for example, you have a loved one who got hurt,
Mm-mm.
and then they got hurt again. And maybe it's a physical injury or an emotional injury, but okay, let's talk about physical. Let's just stick to that. Let's say you have a loved one who got a physical injury, and you really find it difficult. I've encountered this, and some people have also. You do everything you can to care for that person, but you cannot somehow care for them physically, like actually like help them maybe walk around or do these things because you really want to throw up, because it seems like you haven't processed the fact that you know
Mm-mm.
I almost made Mura that this happened to them.
Mm-mm.
Like
Mm-mm.
it is, would that be a form of minor or major trauma?
Well, it's I said, like, for lack of a better term, because I
Yeah.
don't want to label it like minor or major trauma,
Mhm.
just because I may perceive it as something minor, but for somebody else it can be like a major thing,
Mhm.
but maybe, I guess, it's like, it's not, definitely it might not be life threatening, but the
Mhm.
effect could still be quite significant.
Maybe just an emotional effect, and for this
Yeah.
person, they
Mm-mm.
need to process that. Thank you for
That's
going down
right.
into the rabbit hole with me, doctor. I mean,
Yeah.
I just
And if I have to give a diagnosis, that might be a kind of like adjustment, like a kind of
adjustment.
adjustment
Okay.
disorder, let's say with anxiety or disturbance in
Mhm.
conduct, or something like that. Officially,
Mhm.
it might not be labeled as PTSD.
Mhm. Thank you, doctor. I mean, I asked you all of those questions, and I
Mm.
threw out all of the terms and things there, and maybe, illnesses, because you did mention their illnesses, and what first got you interested is why do people have these illnesses, and then you realize, hey, there's another aspect with people who want to be well or get well, and there's that
Yeah.
middle ground in the spectrum you mentioned.
Mm. Mm-mm.
Um, when it comes to all of this, how do we're talking about it here, and people do throw out terms, and it seems to be more, I mean, when we throw out terms and we're joking around, it seems to be more acceptable, but actually it's, in a way, it's not. I mean, how do you, for mental health awareness, how do you approach reducing the stigma around surrounding mental health issues in your practice? Like, how do you reduce that? Because you did say you have patients who come in and they're ashamed. Like, how did they get there? I mean, do you talk to their relatives too? I mean, there are
Yeah.
things, there is a stigma. I mean, okay,
Yeah.
let's start with the stigma. Do you believe there's a stigma in our society when it comes to mental
Oh,
health issues?
definitely. Definitely, Nicole. I think it's been there since time immemorial. And,
Mm.
when we have our conventions, it's something that we frequently, talk about
Can
also.
I go to one of those conventions as a
I'll tell
layperson?
you. I'll tell you if you have one. But you see, Nicole, I think naman, there's like improvement. I remember, like, when we were residents, it was like so much worse. It is so
Yes.
much worse. People just like, get hush hush. Sometimes they
Yeah.
want to go to your clinic like after office hours, so nobody sees that they're there, like seeing a
Mhm.
psychiatrist, ganon. But in
Yes.
recent years, I think with the younger ones, with
Mhm.
the younger ones, they're really very open and very knowledgeable,
Mhm.
about like mental illness. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of it has been, a lot of the stigma has been reduced since I was like a resident, no? How do I lessen that in my practice? Well, definitely by psychoeducation. You
Mhm.
teach people, that, it's not really, it's not like you said, it's not being insane, it's not being maarte, it's not
Mhm.
a matter of weakness, it's not a matter of praying, so you teach them. So
Mhm.
you talk with your patients, and then yes, you're right. I talk with family members to try to
Mhm.
explain, what the patient is going through, what will help, my
Mhm.
patient, for them to get better. And then,
Mhm.
like this, when I do this, that's why I like
Yes.
talking, because like, like interviews and all of that, because it helps in my advocacy for mental health, and this like, being media, it's sort of like,
Mhm.
debunking myths, and
Yes.
like teaching about mental illness, mental health. Hopefully that will get through to some people. And
I
kahit na
wish
super liit.
Yes. I wish you would talk here more often, Doc. Ano ba yan? Keep coming on the show. It's also an advocacy I'd like to...
Masasawa ang mga listeners.
Ay, hindi. Hindi. Yung mga listeners dito, ano, marami yung question. Ano yan, matalino yan. Di yan but we will also, I appreciate the other doctors. But I want you here more often because it's something, it's like an advocacy, and it's something I think if we address mental health awareness and mental health issues, it can help physically.
Exactly. Totally agree with that.
Okay. Doctor, we're talking about the stigma. No? You mentioned younger people. Sorry, man, I gotta ask you some hard questions. I have come across people a little bit older than me or my age, and they're in the corporate world. And we were discussing like HR, human resources stuff, and basta whatever, that I have a lot of like conversations. And then one of them said, I quote him, he said, anyone over 40 or above, I believe that they have depression or any mental health issue. I'm quoting someone, okay? And he said, but I think a lot of the kids, because he deals with a lot of students nowadays, use it as a crutch or an excuse. I mean, and so I said to just not show up. And he said, yeah, because like they're absent and they'll say they have a mental health issue, and these are adult kids already. I mean, they're like in college maybe, and then parang you can't like fail them or anything, pero they're using it as an excuse. What do you think of that? Have some people abused it perhaps? Okay, if it's too controversial, you don't have to answer, but I had
no.
to
I'm
put it
trying
out there.
to think. No.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is kasi, I think the standards that we set, there are certain standards we sort of unconsciously set.
Yes.
And standards na, if you're able to meet this, then it's legitimate for you to feel like this. But, as I said, like I have a patient na, ang kausap ko, tapos yung sabi ng father, baka ano lang yan, over-emotional yan, ayaw lang magtrabaho, etc. Sobrang bakit ako dati? Ganon. It's always like this. Bakit kami noon dati, mas grabe pang napagdaanan, etc. But the thing is kasi, if you're looking at the as I said, nobody wants to be sick. Who does not want to be productive? Who does not want to live, their best life ever? It's just that maybe... That's it. Diba? Sometimes maybe it's these younger people, maybe they don't have, kasi we don't understand, like for example, yung mga social media na yan. Kapag medyo mas matanda ako lang sa social media, kahit ano i-post nila dyan, hindi mo mabasa yung mga yan eh. But I
was gonna get into that, Doc, and ask you. Glad you mentioned it. There has, for me, just as an observer, as a non-medical professional, as a lay person, just observing the world, it's changed so much.
Exactly.
In the last how many years, and it's so fast. Like I myself am of a certain generation. I played on the rooftop. I climbed trees. I fell. Good thing the roof broke my fall. I have those experiences. Biking, all of that, team sports. And then people started playing video games. And we love video games too. But parang, I'm just giving you my experience because I can tell you from my age, like it's been difficult to adjust. First, we had the telephone, then you didn't know who's calling you, and then you need the name. Tapos party line, aawayin mo, party line, malis ka dyan, di ba? Tapos may cross line, and then nag-aaway na kayo. And then, you sneak in to use the phone. It's not even a cordless phone. And then if you had a cordless phone, wow, di ba? What a
cellphone yung bago, laki-laki pa.
Yung cellphone. And then the telephone in your kitchen had the longest cord. Right? So you could go to your living room and like lie down on the floor, make telebabad, okay? And then if your mom walks out, like, who's that? You rush to your room, right? I mean, we had all these experiences, and then the big cell phone, and then you could text, but you couldn't send pictures, and all of these like updating. Okay, I'm not saying these gadgets are bad because they do make our life easier, but it's always an adjustment, an adjustment, an
Yeah.
adjustment.
Mm-mm-mm.
And there's something coming out every year, another 2 years. And I mean, the younger people seem to be very adept at adjusting.
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm.
But it's, sometimes social media stresses me out. And when
Yeah.
it comes to social media, okay, do you think that is something that maybe old people do not old, but older people who are maybe parents now do not quite get, or maybe they're irritated at the whole fact that, we've jumped so much
Yeah. I,
technologically and in the way we deal with each other socially, that we have these expectations that we are all struggling.
yeah, exactly, diba, Nicole? Kasi like, back to like what I was saying, before, like, let's say, as you said, life was so simple before. You go to school, you go home. Like if you were being bullied, then you get bullied at school and that's it.
Yeah.
But like right now, can you imagine the kids right now? Because of all of this social media,
Yeah.
if you're not just you're being bullied, like not just like in school, but you can get like being
Yeah.
cyber bullied. They
Mhm.
have to like contend with all of these like picture perfect people like all around. They have to contend with all of these standards that are being put out there.
Mhm.
You see, so what I'm saying now, maybe we should to be like a little bit more sensitive also.
Yes.
Like maybe the coping of this generation is not so strong just because the stressors are like higher also. Not
And
because
it's new. We don't know how to deal with it yet.
Oo, di ba? So maybe their coping mechanisms is medyo kulang pa kasi bata pa sila eh. They haven't
Yes.
really
That happened
really
naman
developed,
to
di ba?
people without social media. Like, you don't have the right shoes in school.
That's
Nabully
right.
ka.
So we have to like understand where they're coming from also and not judge them na sabihin mo na, bakit ang weak naman itong ano na to generation. Because you just assume that people are doing the best they can.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and if people are not exactly doing the best they can, well, ano na yun, they will reveal themselves. Kasi even before, there were people who were really like, how shall we say, I can't find the right word right now. I had it earlier, but a lot of people are naughty also when they're younger, but they shall reveal themselves when they're older. So, but in your point of view, we have to assume that they are doing the best they
I
can.
think so. I
Mm.
think so.
And maybe there are
In
things
general,
that,
I believe that then. I
Mhm.
believe that. It's just that maybe it's not the right time,
Mhm.
They don't have the right motivation to do the things that they should be doing.
Mhm.
So with that, I think it will give you compassion to
Mhm.
understand what like people are going through because we do not judge them based on the standard, whatever standards you have.
Yes.
But try to understand where they're coming from. As I said,
Mhm.
somebody who's like really narcissistic, if you look at it in terms of because when they were younger, they probably did not get the validation that they needed, then, instead of parang inis, it would be like compassion that you feel for them.
But can that compassion go too far to the point where you are abused and you don't even realize it?
It is different. Like being compassionate towards someone is different from having no boundaries.
Okay.
You can still have compassion for someone, but set your boundaries also
You
so
need
that you're not
boundaries.
abused. Yeah.
And the world cannot revolve around them in your everyday thing because it gets
Yeah.
ruined.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay, so it gets difficult in relations when someone has to know their place and they're narcissists because of the control or whatever it is they have, whatever other thing. I was going to ask you earlier, I'm asking you now, for people who are not, we understand, we have compassion, but how do other people protect themselves? Because, there are family members who will extend their compassion and help someone through what they're going through, but there are also others who get affected. How do we protect ourselves? Or how do people who get affected in a negative way protect themselves also when it comes to people with these? It's different. I know you can't generalize. That's why I'm focusing on maybe narcissistic, borderline. Because when someone has depression,
That's
sometimes
different.
they don't. It's themselves that they put down. I notice that mostly.
Mm-mm-mm.
But when they have other personality disorders like narcissistic personality disorder or borderline, they tend to pick on other people. So how do
And
we
that's by
protect them?
nature. That's how persons with personality disorders are. Usually, they will not seek treatment because they don't realize there's anything wrong
They
It's
believe they're right all the time.
yeah, it's the
They
people
cannot be
around them
wrong.
that get affected. No?
Oo.
So anyway, so going back, well, I guess it depends, no, on the level of association that you need to have with this person. Obviously, pag medyo ano naman, if somebody's not very close, you just like protect yourself by avoiding them. But then, if it's like really close family members or if it's a spouse, then you have to and you have to live with them, you know. The important thing is that you set your boundaries. You know what is acceptable to you and what is not acceptable to you. So for
Have you,
example, kapag let's say, minumura-mura ka na, then you have to lay down the cards. This is not acceptable behavior. I understand that you're feeling bad, but I will not take this, like this kind of so
what,
you have to set your boundaries and your limits.
what if they have been violent with someone else in the family and you're trying to understand both sides? I mean, how do you set your boundaries with that? Let's say you're the person who's caught in between because you have the most compassion for both sides. Have you ever seen patients where they don't know that they're being part of the cycle of abuse, or they don't know that they're being brainwashed essentially, or unconsciously siding with,
Oo. So now we're talking about parang abusive relationships
yes,
na. Oo.
and there's shame associated with it.
Oo.
Even the one who gets abused feels ashamed to say it. I've seen it in our society.
Oo. And there's really a cycle, There's a cycle of abuse wherein, initially parang initially everything's like honeymoon period, everything's like so perfect. And then after that, for one reason or another, the tension will build up. Tension will build up until such time tapos sasabog. And then the abuse will happen. Whether it be physical, emotional, verbal, sexual, whatever kind of abuse.
Psychological.
Psychological, emotional. So, and then sasabog siya. And then after that, magsisisi. Tapos, di ba
Mabait
pag
naman.
sumabog din, sasabihin, ako talaga aalis na ako. Pero after that, babait na naman. Sobrang bait na naman. Sasabihin, ay, hindi, mabait naman talaga tong
Oo, mabait naman talaga siya.
Oo, talagang ganun lang. Kasi baka ako din kasi may kasalanan.
So you start blaming
Yeah,
yourself.
start blaming yourself. And then, until tas honeymoon, tas babalik na naman. It then becomes a cycle.
The cycle. Suddenly be sweet, give you flowers, notes, ganyan. And then, for some reason, kung hindi galit sa'yo, galit sa mga tao around you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alam mo, mahirap kasi yung mga abusive relationships, mahirap talaga. You have to recognize it's really very hard na parang to get out of. Even like you're doing therapy, it's not like, eventually it will have to be the person who will have to make the decision to get out. If you are like a loved one, the most that you can do is parang be supportive and let the person know that, you will be there if they need the help. Now, ibang usapan na yan kapag let's say parang there's a threat na to the safety of the person. Kapag talagang pwede nang let's say masaktan, that's an emergency situation, then paalisin mo na talaga dun sa bahay na yon. But otherwise, you have to be very patient. Sometimes nga, it will take like kasi pag nandun sila, they don't want to get out Tapos until such time, parang something will happen, tapos will become a moment they leave. And sometimes it's the family who will put their feet down. I'm really getting you out of there whether you like it or not. And then pag naalis na,
in the cycle of abuse, as you were saying, ayaw nila umalis kasi parang they feel they have a right to control this, Pero sasabihin lang, aalis ako, ganyan. Whatever, pero hindi talaga sila aalis.
Hindi nila kaya. Kasi nga, parang that other person, the one who's controlling them, the abusive person, parang has somehow instilled in them na parang, you won't be able to do this. Kadalasan walang trabaho. Hindi sila pinapagtrabaho, so walang means. So it's really a very hard, and sometimes it takes years for the person to be able to leave talaga.
And what if it's baliktad, doctor? Like, yung nanga-abuse, wala naman siyang trabaho, pero parang nakuha niya yung loob na kawawa naman ako. Diba there's that? They can be manipulative and say, kawawa naman ako. Tapos, we had such good years together. And for some reason, miserable pa rin siya.
That's really part of the manipulation na. Even if walang trabaho, it doesn't change the fact that, he's abusive and he's manipulating the situation. Same situation whether may trabaho or wala.
There's a lot of that going on, and I wanted to bring it up with mental health awareness because I notice in our society, even when you speak out, there is shame and they shame you. Now, I'm
Oo.
gonna tell you guys there, you know who you are. I mean, because there have been situations that I have witnessed in the last few years where, you know, women, we don't help each other when it comes to this.
Oo.
And I'm so glad that there are professionals like you who can help.
Oo.
Kasi we really need help. We don't know how to lift each other out because
Oo.
as soon as someone says something, parang it's swept under the rug by society. But
Oo.
no, I'd rather not deal with that.
Alam mo, Nicole, hindi nga yung mga mental health professionals ang first line eh. The first line will be the community support. You know,
Mm.
if a woman wants to get out of an abusive relationship, ang daming pwedeng gawin. You know, kahit yung family lang, you know,
Oo.
parang magsalita, mag sa family, and I'm sure the family will be more than happy to help
What
her
if the woman
person.
has, can we talk about battered woman syndrome, which may not be the right term anymore, but you know, when you're so into it and then you are making excuses for the person, kasi, and then you have this na, ang tagal na namin, you know, I've heard that a lot with Filipino couples,
Yeah.
na pag naghiwalay ka, ano sasabihin nila tungkol sa'yo? Yung babae pa yung may kasalanan, na babae na nga yung lalaki, pero yung babae pang may kasalanan. You know, and anong sasabihin ng mga tao, anong sasabihin ng mga society, tas ngayon pa na ang tagal natin. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yung parang tiisin mo na lang kasi ganito, ganyan. Tapos wala ka naman income, kunin mo na lang yung, I mean, how does the community do that? What if the woman is so, you know, you can see her being oppressed and she's slowly losing herself and her character for one reason or another. You know, especially if she starts getting sick because there's a certain age. How would the community help? You said community's first liners.
Yeah.
And how do you help a person who's like that if you really care?
Tama ka. Kasi sometimes it's very hard to help someone who doesn't want to be helped eh.
Mhm.
You know? And as I said, it's a very long process. You know, it's not something that, you know, biglang one day na lang na parang she wants out. Hindi siya ganun eh. Sometimes it will start with contemplating the leaving.
Mhm.
And then after contemplating, actually the contemplation may actually last years, you know. Tapos maybe at some point, you know, there will be the last straw. Tapos biglang aalis na lang talaga. But it's very difficult. I think, you know, unless you have experienced it, you don't really understand like how hard
Yeah.
it is. Diba? Pero alam mo, there are some women, because I was able to work with yung parang mga social workers and give talks on there are some people, and you know, talagang mabibilib ka sa kanila. It takes a lot of courage talaga. And as I said, the community, meaning, let's say they go to the barangay, they can always get like a barangay protective order. They can go to the to help sa women's desk for help, you know, and then that they will be protected. So there are all of those things that are available to that woman. Pero they will have to be able to want to do it for themselves. You know, unless the family really takes steps to like, you know, remove them from the situation.
I pray that the women, especially the women, and there are men also are in this situation, that they are enlightened enough and they find the courage. And who cares what society says, because we're talking about mental health awareness and stigma here. You know, so thank you for that, doctor. I mean, sometimes we go into deep topics and sometimes
I'm sorry we have to go into this, but I think this needs to be talked about just so they understand that there is help available. I've seen a lot, you know, it was very difficult for them, but they were able to get out. Kasi ang feeling nila sometimes in that situation, wala ng future. It's not true, you know, when they get out.
Or parang tiisin ko na lang kasi we were together for a long time. Matanda na kami. Anong sasabihin ng mga tao? Kasi yung isa Klingon eh. That's what my other sister calls a Klingon. You know, what do you call this? Star Trek?
I know.
Diba? You know Star Trek?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Sige, so that shows my age and pop culture preferences. Well, they have these like characters who were like at war with them, then they became part. Their names are Klingons, but my sister named them as Klingons kasi they're Kling. They won't. Yung talagang ano yan kasi dito. Oh, ayan, kapit ko. So, okay. What role can early intervention play in addressing mental health challenges? Let's go back to like the other side of the spectrum where,
wellness.
you know,
Good. I think it's important for us to focus on wellness, no? What I'm sorry, what was your question?
No, it's okay.
I got-
What role can
yeah.
early intervention play, and how would you know
Yeah.
when to intervene? Like, is the person
Aha.
okay? Like,
Okay.
uh
I think it's very important right from the start, kahit na bata pa lang. Actually, with the Mental Health Act, children are supposed to learn about mental health.
okay.
If you're able to teach your children like resilience, you know, how to be like to have problems, how to deal with problems, how to do
Mhm.
problem solving, how to soothe themselves when something bad happens, that adds to the resilience. That means that when there are further challenges that come along, they will be better able to deal with it without, that temporary difficulty, without that inducing like mental illness or
So,
like clinical
do you get
depression or
involved in like schools and education? I mean, as but there's that mental health act, but who's doing it?
maganda yan because of the Mental Health Act. Parang we're getting a lot of referrals kasi I work
Mhm.
also with Hospital ng Makati, which is a government hospital. Walang child and adolescent kasi usually I want to leave this to the child and adolescent people. They're the experts to that. Pero kasi like we work with schools and I don't know, the Department of Education, like I don't know the organization.
Pero importante
But
yung
we've had
focus mo sa
meetings.
adults, doctor, kasi we're supposed to be
Oo.
functioning.
Yeah, true.
It's harder, di ba?
Pero kasi, if you're able to build mental health at a very young
Yes.
age, then you will hopefully be able to prevent like, mental illnesses in the future. Of course, there are some people na talagang malakas yung genetic
Oo.
predisposition, ha? But I digress, Nicole. Please bear with
No,
me.
that's fine. Digress and digress. I digress forever.
Kasi like in psychiatry, there's no like clear cut. In psychiatry, it's always biopsychosocial. Sometimes some people, if you have like no if you have like the predisposition, let's say mataas ang family history of depression or whatever, anxiety, pero if you're able to sustain a very healthy environment, no stressors or minimal ang stressors, then that gene for depression may not be expressed at all.
Okay, so
Conversely, sometimes you have no gene for it, but if the environment, the stressors are bad enough, then you may have like mental illness. So what I'm saying is if you're able to sustain like, a healthy environment, improve the coping mechanisms, so that may lessen the likelihood of mental illness in the future.
you mentioned biopsychosocial. Can you just
That's
define
correct.
biological?
That's
So
right.
those are the
When you
genes.
say biological,
Psycho.
you refer to like the genes, you refer to like, for example, the neurotransmitters or the chemicals in the brain. So like, for example, if somebody's depressed, we would want to increase the serotonin or the norepinephrine, the dopamine. So that's the biological part of it. But I'm telling you, sometimes if it cannot just be medications, if somebody's going through a breakup, kahit na anong gamot ang ibigay ko, if you don't do like psychotherapy and help the person process, then that's not gonna, make a lot.
Is that the psycho part, the psychotherapy?
The psychological is like yung mga coping mechanisms, the psychotherapy, the psychological aspect of it, how you process the trauma, how you're able to like deal with the trauma.
And then the social part,
And the
kasi
social would be the
biopsychosocial.
social stressors. So that would
Okay.
mean like stressors like financial stressors or relationships. Those are the.
And so like if you
If
broke
you're
up with your
able-
if you broke up with your boyfriend, don't go stalking him.
No, truly, and I have patience. The more that you stalk, the more preoccupied you are with that person. But if you're able to like, unblock that person on social media, wala na out
Yeah.
of sight, out of mind. So you're right. That's part of the
Yeah.
social.
And I want to remind people, when you see
Yeah.
stuff, because some people get bothered, like, they're so happy, look at them, they're enjoying themselves. People only put, a lot of times they only put the good part there. They
Yeah,
don't show themselves when they're down.
Exactly. You have to understand that.
And it's not a bad thing, but, it doesn't mean that you are not well because these people are having the time of their lives. They took a picture when they were happy, but they also have to like, scrounge around and work and
Yeah.
get tired and all that.
Oo.
And you're,
Sorry, what are we talking about? I digressed.
no, sige. No, we were talking about, strategies for promoting mental health and
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
in early intervention. And you mentioned it already, like, you do work with hospitals, Department of Education, the Mental Health Act. So that is some way, like you mentioned that if you're able to give,
Start them
if you're able
early.
to educate and start people young, they will have the mechanisms to cope.
Yeah.
and avoid things.
Sometimes, if it's like
Mhm.
very young people, what you can do is
Mhm.
like help them identify emotions.
Yes.
Kasi if they're able to identify, then, oh, I'm feeling sad. What should I do when I'm feeling sad?
Yes.
So maybe I should talk with someone. I should tell my mom if I'm feeling sad, or if I'm feeling scared of a bully, then what should I
Mhm.
do if I'm feeling scared? So that one helps them identify, their emotions, at the same time identify the problem, so that they'll be able to look for possible
So
solutions.
that's a big thing, Doc, no? When you're all muddled in your emotions, you don't know whether you're scared, whether you're frustrated, whether you're angry,
Mm-mm.
whether you're ashamed. So that's one thing you work on, like, well, actually I feel ashamed because I wasn't able to finish this, my assignment or something
Yeah.
that about kids.
So what should
Actually,
I
I'm
do? Then I should maybe manage my time better.
mhm,
'Di ba? Kasi you're able to identify na the problem eh. Then you
mhm.
can look for solutions.
And doctor, I wanna go back to what you said earlier, and you said it a few times because I wanna stress to the people out there. I don't want them to come back in any way and misinterpret what you said. There is, as you said, we are a Catholic country. And one of the myth busters that you put out is, hindi, pray ka lang ganyan. Yeah, praying helps, but at some point, you have to recognize that there is a problem.
Yeah, oo,
No,
tama. Thank you
I
for
just want to stress
clarifying.
that this is not, this doesn't have to do with anything against religion.
No.
Diba?
Actually, Nicole,
Oo.
spirituality and religion is one of the protective factors.
Mhm.
Part of resiliency. Somebody who has a very good spiritual life
Yeah.
is protected. There have been
Mhm.
studies talaga against,
Yes.
like, mental illness and all of that. What I'm saying lang is, you don't minimize it by saying na parang
Yes.
just pray, and you sort of minimize what that person is going through eh. Pero kung talagang for
Yes.
that person, spirituality, praying is a very healthy
It's
coping
already helping
mechanism.
them, but
But
they need more.
but there are certain kinds of like negative religious coping. If your belief
Yes.
is in a God who's very punitive, then that's not very helpful. But you
Okay,
need
so
to
if
be
you
able to
believe a God
believe
who
in a loving
punishes,
help. No,
mm-mm,
not helpful at all. But
mm-mm.
believing in a compassionate God, and forgiving, then that can give you solace. In
Forgiving of
times of
you,
yeah.
because you look down on yourself when you have mental health issues.
That's right.
Okay. So, because you already put yourself down, people put you down and dismiss you. So I'm
And you
glad,
have
I
this
just wanted to
loving
bring
God who
out.
wants to thank you for clarifying that, Nicole.
Yeah, yeah, no, I just wanted to bring that. It's a
Yeah.
very important.
Mm-mm.
I know you focused on spirituality before, so you know, it's not that you're putting that down or putting it away, but don't be dismissive about it and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, you just pray and ganyan," and then some
In
commandment like
that
that. Some people,
context.
yeah,
Pero
some
alam mo,
people
Nicole,
don't.
spirituality is not just about religion, ha? You can
Yes.
have somebody who's not religious at all, but can be very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like spiritual activities, like for example, doing something very creative.
Yes.
If you're like getting so absorbed in what
Yeah.
you're doing, that in itself is a spiritual experience.
Yay. Okay.
So it can be like, creating something that can be
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual experience. So even if you're not religious, then you can still be spiritual and believe
Yeah,
in
I'd like to say, for those who are creative and you want to express yourself, as Nadine Jacinto said, the opposite of depress is
yeah.
express. She's encouraging some artists. I mean, scientists discover, and that's great. And I'm guessing you're a doctor, so you're a scientist, right?
Mhm.
Creative people create just like God does. So we all have our roles, and it's spiritual. Thank you for mentioning that, doctor. So part of therapy, I mean, if people want to express themselves, do they, like, how can we help? And family members, is it good to engage in activities like, Mythbusters, are they good or not? Like writing, painting, enrolling in classes, pottery. Are those things good?
Yeah, I think it's good. Somehow it will like bind some energy. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing something that you enjoy and you get
Mm-hmm.
like engaged, even if you don't get like that dopamine rush, kasi like for example,
Yes.
if you, pag bumili ka ng bumili, you buy a lot of things, there's that dopamine rush, that's parang
Ay,
tumatak
nako,
sa system
yes.
mo, But being engaged in something, we call it like eudaimonic kind of
Mm-hmm.
like happiness. It doesn't give you like immediate rush. However,
Mm-hmm.
in the long term, it gives you a sense of well-being. It makes you feel better about yourself to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do something that's like really something that makes you grow.
Something
So
that makes you
that
go.
definitely helps.
And is there something about using your hands and doing something repetitive, or does it work on the body that way? Like, yeah, you don't get that rush, but
Mhm.
if you do these things and engage in some creative activities, does it help in the long run? Is there a scientific reason for that? Because before they used to tell people to crochet to
Mhm.
get out anxiety instead of pulling out your skin like I do. Fingers.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, because it will engage. Like, for example, like
Mhm.
learning a new skill. Learning a
Mhm.
new skill will engage like different parts of your brain. So that
Mhm.
might actually help with like brain fitness. It
Mhm.
exercises your brain. So like
Mhm.
if you learn, like, for example, ballroom dancing, and it's not
Mhm.
something that you usually do, it will exercise your brain. And if you exercise your brain, then it will make it like work more. It will give you like some
Mhm.
clarity. It will
Mhm.
teach you like how to deal with problems, how to solve problems.
Yeah,
So that is, instead of physical fitness, we call it like parang brain fitness.
brain
So that.
fitness. What about for people who, for example, are not mobile? Can what kind of activities can they engage in? Is it the painting, the crocheting, the
Yeah.
throwing balls around the house? What?
Mm-mm. Yeah, if they're not mobile, well, definitely part of them would still be mobile. So it
Yes.
depends
Yes.
on the activity level. I'm not very familiar na, but kung
Mm-hmm.
talagang kailangan, you might need like, like consult like rehab med or occupational
Mm-hmm.
therapist to help them come up with like mga activities.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like certain exercises, like for example, there are like certain apps, although these
Mm-hmm.
apps are very controversial, yung
Mm-hmm.
mga apps that sort of like exercise the brain, you have those also.
Mm-hmm.
No? But then it
Ah,
depends on the
okay.
level of activity.
So like crossword puzzles.
Yeah, mga sudoku, mga ganon.
Oh, okay. I challenge you to crossword puzzles. Matatalo ako, Doc.
Mas matatalo ko sa'yo.
And then I like trivia games. And then I get so upset at myself when I start losing. But anyway, Doc,
Mm,
there were so many questions.
mm-mm.
And I just want to ask you, okay, what are the key challenges that you have in raising mental health awareness? Before we're actually running out of time, but some of the challenges you face because mental health awareness is something that we hear about it, but there's a big stigma. And how exactly, what are the challenges you face as someone who's practicing and like advocating for it, really?
I think you're right. I think stigma is the biggest challenge because that stigma well, first will prevent people from getting the help that they
Mhm.
need, and stigma will prevent, their loved ones from understanding what they're going through.
Mhm.
So I think that is the biggest challenge that we face as mental health
And again, I
professionals.
love what you said, that when people have mental health issues and they may be in the spectrum, maybe they're good but they're not thriving, maybe they're in the middle and it's a hiccup or a hump, and for now, or maybe they're at the very end. They are I love what you said, that people with issues and who wanna, I guess I'm adding to what you said, no, who wanna explore their mental health and become healthier mentally, are not weak.
No, definitely not. In fact, Nicole, I truly, truly admire people who get help. Because can you imagine how hard it is for you to acknowledge that there's a
Yeah.
problem and to gather that courage to get help? Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who are very strong, they're so scared. They're so
Yeah.
scared to get help. And for somebody to finally gather that courage to get help, I think is quite admirable. So instead of weakness, I would look at that as a strength.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah.
And I guess,
I
what do you think of there's an adage that there's no, I mean, also when you seek help, um, that, the patient or the person has to do work, right? What do you think
exactly.
of there's no way around it but through it?
I totally agree. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree. Although, I think that will depend on the diagnosis. No,
Mm-hmm.
like so, certain people, if they're not yet ready, like for example, there's like some huge trauma that they went
Mm-hmm.
through. If they're still not yet ready, they're still quite fragile emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Then we wouldn't want to,
Yeah.
to
So you
force it.
stagger it. And you
Yeah.
make it like in an
It will,
individualized.
it will depend on the on where the patient is at. But when they're a little bit stronger and they think that they want to talk about it, then we will help them through the process of processing it.
Doctor, I'm so sorry, but we've run out of time. I wish we could do this for like 3 hours. But my producer is killing me, and Anyway, but
Okay.
doctor,
Yeah.
any final words? I'll give you the floor about mental health awareness or anything you'd like to say.
Yeah. Okay. I think mental health is not just about mental illness. Even if if you don't have any mental illness, in fact, you would want to protect yourself against mental illness. And there are like a lot of ways that you can do that. And that is and you can do that by there are so many of build your resilience. You eat properly, do not go into drugs because that might precipitate depression, anxiety, etc. What else? You have enough exercise, you associate with people, you practice spirituality, you look at how you perceive things, rather that you try to look for things that you are happy about, that you're grateful for, because that forces you to look at the good things that are happening to you. There are so many ways. So try to and if you're going through a hard time, sometimes you just have to go through it, and then after that you will be all the stronger for it. You'll be more resilient because of the bad things that have happened to you and the difficult things that have happened to you.
Thank you, Dr. Goshu. I'm so sorry. I'm so comfortably not getting karma for all the accents that I do, and you know me when I'm like hanging out. Dr. Goshu, I hope to see you again on the show, and I actually hope to see you. You owe me one. I'm gonna nag you about that right now after the show. But everybody, thank you for tuning into Healthline with Makati Med. We've had the privilege of talking to Dr. 𝗛𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗵. Even her name is like, and you see her smile, and it's her advocacy. It's what she trained for. And thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this over and over again. Come on, just do it, get into it, and be inspired. And if this is the kind of mental health professional that you're going to deal with, you're going to be able to thrive, So also, you might, when you shop for doctors, it happens, get the right one for you. Thank you, Dr. Gochu. Thank you, everybody.
Nicole.
They're
Thank
going
you,
to kill me
everyone.
already. Tune in next week. Healthline with Makati Med. Monday, 5 p.m. Okay, Dr. Gochu. Okay, bye guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Healthline with expert doctors from Makati Med, giving you the chance to interact, uplifting your lifestyle. Moderated by Nicole Jacinto. Tune in again next week for your weekly dose of Healthline.